The smart lock on Meira's condo door had been acting up for weeks, and tonight, 3 whiskeys deep, I finally decided to fix the damn thing. Soren Valden, tech genius extraordinaire, reduced to rewiring his wife's apartment because she was too busy climbing the corporate ladder to call a locksmith. I should have knocked first. He'll propose at the gala. Meira's voice drifted through the crack in the door, sharp and calculated. I'll humiliate him on stage, get him fired for emotional instability. Clean break. My screwdriver slipped, nearly taking off my thumb. The voice responding was deeper, familiar. Lukas Sorrell, her boss at Meridian Corp. You sure he won't suspect anything? Lukas asked. Soren, please. He thinks debugging code makes him smart. He has no idea how the real world works. I froze there in the hallway, half drunk and holding a handful of wires, listening to my wife of 5 years plan my professional execution with her boss. The smart lock suddenly seemed like the least broken thing in my life. The transfer went through? Meira continued. Clean. Offshore account. Your name nowhere near it. After the gala, we'll have 6 months before anyone notices the bonus discrepancies. I always said she was a planner. Should have checked who she was planning against. The lock clicked shut as I backed away, my hands shaking. Not from the whiskey anymore. Meira worked for Meridian Corp as a senior compliance officer. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was apparently complying with everything except basic human decency. I worked there too, in the IT department, fixing servers and pretending I didn't notice how the executives treated us like digital janitors. Back in my cramped apartment across town, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes from when I'd moved out 6 months ago, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what I'd heard. The separation had been Meira's idea. Space to figure things out, she'd said. Now I knew what she'd been figuring out. My phone buzzed. A text from her. Fixed the lock yet? Need it working for tomorrow's dinner party. I typed back. All set. Your secrets are safe. She responded with a heart emoji. The woman was planning to destroy me, and she sent me a heart emoji. I opened my laptop and started digging. If Meira thought I was too dumb for corporate games, maybe it was time to learn the rules. Her social media showed the usual corporate networking events, charity galas, posed photos with colleagues. But there were patterns. Late-night posts from hotel bars during business trips. Photos with Lukas that seemed a little too friendly, a little too close. I cross-referenced her travel dates with Lukas's LinkedIn activity. Same cities, same weeks, different hotels, but always within walking distance. Emotional instability, I muttered, scrolling through months of evidence. We'll see who's unstable. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, I showed up at Meridian Corp, like nothing had changed. The building was one of those glass and steel monuments to corporate excess, all clean lines and cold surfaces. I badged in, nodded to security, and took the elevator to the IT department in the basement. My cubicle sat wedged between the server room and the break room, a perfect spot to overhear conversations people thought were private. Today, I listened with new purpose. Did you see Meira's presentation yesterday? One of the accounting assistants was saying. Lukas couldn't take his eyes off her. I heard she's getting promoted again, another voice added. Must be nice to have connections. I pulled up the company directory and started mapping relationships. Lukas Sorrell, VP of Operations. Soren Valden, Senior Compliance Officer, reporting directly to Lukas. Convenient. During lunch, I walked past Meira's office. She was on the phone, laughing at something, twirling her hair like a teenager. Through the glass, I could see her computer screen showing a chat window, not work-related, judging by her expression. Soren! Her voice made me jump. She'd spotted me lurking. What brings you upstairs? Server maintenance, I lied smoothly. Checking network connectivity on this floor. Well, don't let me keep you. Her smile was perfect, practiced. "Still on for dinner Friday?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said, matching her fake enthusiasm. That evening, I hit the boxing gym on 5th Street. The place was a dive, all neon lights and sweat-stained equipment, but it was real in a way Meridian Corp would never be. My coach, Danny Reeves, was an ex-cop who'd seen enough corporate corruption to fill a library. "You look like someone ran over your dog," Danny said, watching me pound the heavy bag with more anger than technique. "My wife's planning to destroy my career and run off with her boss," I said between punches. Danny stopped the bag mid-swing. "You want revenge, Valden? Go for the head. Humiliation hurts more than any punch." "What do you mean?" "Public exposure. Make it so everyone knows what they did. Corporate types hate being embarrassed more than anything." I drove home thinking about Danny's words. Public exposure. The annual charity gala was next week, Meridian Corp's biggest social event of the year. 500 people, including every executive, board member, and major client. If Meira wanted a spectacle, I'd give her one. Back in my apartment, I started planning. First, I needed evidence. Real evidence. Not just overheard conversations and suspicious travel dates. I remembered Meira's laptop. She'd asked me to fix a virus issue last month, and I'd installed remote access software to troubleshoot future problems. Technically against company policy, but technically still active. The remote connection worked perfectly. Meira's computer opened like a book, folders full of emails, documents, and chat logs. I started copying everything, building a digital paper trail of her relationship with Lukas and whatever financial scheme they were running. The bonus discrepancies Lukas mentioned weren't hard to find. Meridian Corp had been paying executive bonuses through a shell company, avoiding taxes and regulatory oversight. Meira had been signing off on the transfers, her compliance officer credentials providing perfect cover. I saved everything to an encrypted drive, then started looking for more personal evidence. Meira's email showed months of increasingly intimate messages with Lukas, mixed with cold, calculating discussions about handling the Soren problem. One email from 3 weeks ago made my stomach turn. "He's getting suspicious about the late nights. Maybe we should accelerate the timeline." Lukas's response: "Patience. The gala will be perfect. Public proposal, public rejection, public breakdown. HR will have grounds to terminate him for workplace disruption." I closed the laptop and poured another whiskey. They weren't just planning to humiliate me. They were planning to destroy my entire career, make me unemployable in the tech industry. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was too stupid to fight back. My phone rang, Meira's name on the screen. "Hey, honey," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Just wanted to confirm you're still planning to propose at the gala," she said sweetly. "I've been thinking about it all day." "Wouldn't dream of disappointing you," I said. "I love you, Soren." The line went quiet. For a moment, I almost believed her. 5 years of marriage, and she could still make that lie sound convincing. "I love you too," I said, and hung up. Time to learn how the real world worked. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian Corp early, parking in the executive garage where Lukas kept his silver BMW. The man had expensive taste in cars and apparently in other men's wives. I waited in my beat-up Honda, sipping coffee and watching the entrance. At exactly 8:15, Lukas pulled in, talking loudly on his phone about quarterly projections and market penetration. The irony of that last phrase wasn't lost on me. He parked 3 spaces away, still yakking about synergies and optimization, corporate buzzwords that meant nothing but sounded important in meetings. I waited until he headed for the elevator, then made my move. The key made a satisfying scraping sound along the driver's side door, from headlight to taillight. Not deep enough to require body work, but visible enough to ruin his day. I pulled out a sticky note I'd prepared and pressed it under his windshield wiper. "Hope this scratch isn't as deep as your secrets." "Excuse me." I spun around, heart hammering. A woman stood by the elevator watching me with curious eyes. Aven Bardell, Meira's assistant. Quiet, efficient, practically invisible in the corporate hierarchy. "Morning, Aven," I said casually, pocketing my keys. "Early start today?" "Always," she replied, studying my face. "Everything okay, Mr. Valden?" "Just peachy," I said, walking toward the elevator. "You know how it is. Some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug." She didn't smile at my joke, just watched me with those sharp eyes. I had the uncomfortable feeling she'd seen exactly what I'd done to Lukas's car. The elevator ride was silent. Aven got off on the executive floor. I continued down to IT. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my small act of vandalism had been witnessed by someone who mattered. Around 10 a.m., I heard Lukas's voice echoing through the parking garage, presumably discovering my artwork. The stream of creative profanity was almost impressive. I smiled and went back to debugging code. Lunchtime brought more reconnaissance. I needed to understand the scope of their operation, figure out how deep the corruption went. The bonus scheme was just the beginning. I took my sandwich to the break room on the executive floor, positioning myself where I could overhear conversations from the corner offices. Corporate executives loved to talk, especially when they thought nobody was listening. "The Cayman account cleared yesterday," someone was saying. I recognized the voice as Patricia Mills, the CFO. "Lukas wants the documentation scrubbed before the audit." "Meira's handling the compliance paperwork," another voice replied. "She's got it locked down tight." I nearly choked on my sandwich. This wasn't just Meira and Lukas skimming bonuses. This was a company-wide scheme, with multiple executives involved. My phone buzzed with a text from Meira. "Dinner tonight? I have news to share." I texted back, "Can't wait to hear it." That evening, Meira chose an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the waiters wore black ties and the wine cost more than my monthly rent. She looked stunning in a blue dress that probably cost more than my car. "You seem different lately," she said over appetizers, "more confident." "Maybe I'm finally growing up," I replied, cutting into my steak, "learning how the real world works." "I'm glad. I always knew you had potential, Soren. You just needed the right motivation." "The right motivation? Like discovering your wife was planning to destroy your life." "Speaking of motivation," Meira continued, "I've been thinking about our future, about what we both want. And what do we want? Success, security, a partnership where we both contribute our strengths." I nodded thoughtfully. "What strengths do you think I bring to the partnership?" "You're loyal, dependable. You don't ask too many questions." There it was. The real reason she'd married me. Not love, not attraction, but convenience. A loyal, dependable husband who didn't ask too many questions while she climbed the corporate ladder using whatever methods necessary. "Questions about what?" I asked innocently. "Oh, work stuff, corporate politics. It's boring, really. Try me. I might be smarter than you think." Something flickered in her eyes, a moment of uncertainty. "Maybe you are," she said softly. We finished dinner making small talk about the gala, the weather, her mother's health. Normal married couple conversation, if you ignored the undercurrent of mutual deception. Back at her condo, Meira poured wine and curled up next to me on the couch. For a moment, it felt like old times, before the separation, before I knew what she really was. "I love you, Soren," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "I know things have been difficult, but I want us to work." "What would that look like?" I asked. "Us working?" "Trust, communication, no more secrets." The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning my professional destruction while talking about trust and communication. "No more secrets," I agreed. "That sounds perfect." I left her place around midnight, my head spinning with more than wine. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved for 5 years, was a complete stranger. Worse, she was a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a useful fool. The next few days blurred together as I gathered more evidence and refined my plan. The remote access to Meira's computer provided a steady stream of incriminating emails and documents. The bonus scheme was even bigger than I'd initially thought, involving shell companies in 3 different countries. But the personal betrayal cut deeper than the financial crimes. Reading Meira's messages to Lukas was like watching my marriage dissolve in real time. "He actually thinks I love him," she'd written. "It's almost sad." Lukas's response: "Useful idiots have their place. After the gala, he won't be useful anymore." I printed everything, organized it into folders, and prepared multiple copies. If they wanted to play corporate games, I'd show them what a motivated IT professional could accomplish. Thursday afternoon, I followed Lukas after work. The man had predictable habits: gym at 6, dinner at his usual restaurant, then a visit to the Riverside Motel on the outskirts of town. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Meira's car pulled into the lot. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. Lukas met her at the car, kissed her in full view of anyone who cared to look, then led her into room 237. I sat there for an hour, watching the light in their window, thinking about 5 years of marriage and wondering how long this had been going on. Then I got out of my car and walked over to Lukas's BMW. The fire extinguisher from the motel hallway made a satisfying crunch against his side mirror. I left another note under his windshield wiper, this one containing a USB drive. Play Meira's greatest hits. The USB contained audio recordings from their phone conversations extracted from Meira's computer. Let him listen to what his girlfriend really thought about their relationship. I was back in my car when they emerged from the motel room. Lukas discovered the mirror immediately, his face turning red as he read my note. Meira stood beside him, scanning the parking lot with suspicious eyes. For a moment, our eyes met across the distance. She couldn't see me clearly in the shadows, but I saw the exact moment she realized someone was watching. I started my engine and drove away, leaving them to deal with the consequences of their choices. Friday morning brought unexpected visitors to my cubicle: 2 security guards and Janet Morrison from HR. "Mr. Valden," Janet said formally, "we need to discuss some recent incidents involving company property." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of incidents?" "Vandalism in the executive parking garage. Unauthorized access to company systems. There have been complaints." "Complaints from who?" "That's confidential. But we're conducting an investigation, and your name has come up." I looked at the security guards, both trying to appear intimidating. "Am I being accused of something specific?" "Not yet," Janet replied. "But we strongly advise you to avoid any further incidents that might reflect poorly on your employment here." After they left, I realized Meira had made her countermove. She was setting me up as the unstable employee, the jealous husband acting out. By the time the gala arrived, HR would be primed to believe whatever story she told about my behavior. But I had one advantage she didn't know about. Her assistant, Aven Bardell, had been watching everything with those sharp eyes. And something told me Aven saw more than she let on. Time to find out whose side she was really on. Friday evening, I waited in the parking garage until most employees had left. Aven Bardell worked late most nights, handling the endless administrative tasks that kept Meridian Corp running. She was the kind of person executives ignored, which made her incredibly valuable for gathering information. She emerged from the elevator at 7:30, looking tired but alert. I intercepted her near her car, a modest sedan that had seen better years. "Aven," I called softly, "could I talk to you for a minute?" She turned, showing no surprise at seeing me. "Mr. Valden, I wondered when you'd approach me." "You've been watching," I said. It wasn't a question. "I watch everything. It's part of the job." "What did you see?" She studied my face in the dim garage lighting. "I saw a man discovering his wife isn't who he thought she was." "And what do you think about that?" I think Meira Valden is very good at using people, but she's not as smart as she believes. There was something in her tone, a hint of personal experience. Has she used you? Aven laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been her assistant for 3 years. I've typed her lies, scheduled her meetings, covered her tracks. She treats me like office furniture. Then why do you do it? Because I needed the job. Because I have a sick mother and student loans. Because sometimes you have to compromise your principles to survive. I understood that feeling better than she knew. But mostly, Aven continued, because I've been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment. My pulse quickened. Documenting what? She pulled a flash drive from her purse. Meeting recordings, email backups, financial records, everything Meira thought she deleted or hid. Why would you give this to me? Because she's planning to destroy you, and then she's planning to destroy me. I heard her talking to Lukas yesterday. After the gala, they're restructuring the department. My position is being eliminated. She's eliminating witnesses. Exactly. So I figure we can help each other. I took the flash drive, feeling its weight like a weapon. What's on here? Proof that the bonus scheme goes back 2 years. Proof that Meira forged compliance documents. Proof that she's been planning your downfall for months. And in exchange? I want a letter of recommendation and a promise that when this explodes, you'll make sure everyone knows I was cooperating with the investigation. Deal, I said without hesitation. There's something else, Aven added. Tomorrow night at the gala, Meira has a surprise planned. She's arranged for HR to be there, ready to escort you out after you have your public breakdown. What kind of breakdown? The kind where you propose, she rejects you, and you become violent or erratic. Security will remove you, HR will have grounds for immediate termination, and she'll look like the victim. The plan was more sophisticated than I'd realized. Meira wasn't just planning to humiliate me. She was orchestrating a complete character assassination. She's underestimated both of us, I said. Yes, she has. That night, I reviewed everything on Aven's flash drive. The evidence was devastating. Not just financial crimes, but a pattern of manipulation and abuse stretching back years. Meira had systematically eliminated rivals, stolen credit for other people's work, and built her career on a foundation of lies. But the personal betrayal still cut deepest. Email threads showed her laughing about my pathetic devotion, making jokes about my appearance, my job, my background. To her, I wasn't a husband. I was a prop in her professional theater. One email from 6 months ago made everything clear. The separation was genius. Now I can do whatever I want while keeping him as backup. If the Lukas thing doesn't work out, I can always go back to my loyal puppy. Backup. That's all I'd ever been. Saturday morning, I drove to the venue for the charity gala. The old Paramount Theater had been restored to its Art Deco glory, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers, the perfect setting for Meira's planned spectacle. I spent the day walking through the space, noting exits, security cameras, and the layout of the stage where I was supposed to propose. The AV booth overlooked the main floor, accessible through a service corridor that connected to the parking structure. Everything I needed for my own spectacle. That evening, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one Meira had bought me for our wedding. The irony seemed appropriate. The gala was already in full swing when I arrived. 500 of the city's most important people, all dressed in expensive clothes and fake smiles. Meridian Corp executives moved through the crowd like sharks, networking and deal-making. I spotted Meira immediately. She wore a stunning red dress that turned heads across the room. Lukas hovered nearby, playing the role of supportive boss while his eyes undressed her in public. Soren! Meira glided over, all warmth and affection. You look handsome tonight. You look beautiful, I replied honestly. She did, evil, manipulative, and planning my destruction, but beautiful. Are you nervous? She asked with fake concern. About what? Tonight. Your big moment. I smiled. I'm looking forward to it. The evening progressed with speeches, silent auction bidding, and the usual charity gala routine. I made small talk with colleagues, danced with Meira, and played the role of devoted husband preparing to propose. Around 10 o'clock, Meira excused herself to freshen up. I followed at a distance, watching her meet Lukas in a secluded corridor. Is he ready? Lukas asked. Like a lamb to slaughter, Meira replied. Janet from HR is positioned near the stage. Security knows to expect trouble. And after? After we celebrate. The Cayman account will be fully funded by Monday. I retreated before they could spot me, my heart pounding with anger and anticipation. They thought they were so clever, so far ahead of the game. Time to change the rules. I made my way to the service corridor, using my knowledge of the building's layout to avoid security cameras. The AV booth was unguarded, just as I'd hoped. The sound system was more sophisticated than I'd expected, but I'd been working with audio equipment since college. I plugged in Aven's flash drive and started uploading files to the presentation computer. Excuse me. I spun around. Aven stood in the doorway, elegant in a simple black dress. Need any help? She asked. I thought you'd want to keep your distance from this. I've kept my distance for 3 years. Tonight I want a front row seat. Together we finished setting up the presentation. Audio files, email screenshots, financial documents, everything needed to expose Meira and Lukas's operation. 5 minutes until showtime, Aven said, checking her watch. Are you ready for this? I asked. I've been ready since the day she hired me. We returned to the main floor separately. The MC was introducing the evening's final speaker, setting up the moment when I was supposed to take the stage and propose. Instead, I walked to the AV booth control panel and pressed play. The first audio file filled the theater. Meira's voice, crystal clear through the sound system. He actually thinks I love him. It's almost sad. Conversation stopped. Heads turned toward the speakers, then toward Meira, who stood frozen near the stage. The second file played Lukas's response. Useful idiots have their place. After the gala, he won't be useful anymore. Now everyone was staring. Meira's face had gone white, her mouth opening and closing without sound. The presentation continued with email screenshots, financial records, and more audio clips. 2 years of corruption and betrayal, laid out for 500 witnesses to see and hear. I walked onto the stage as the final audio file played. Meira's voice again. The separation was genius. Now I can do whatever I want while keeping him as backup. The theater was completely silent now, except for the sound system broadcasting my wife's contempt for our marriage. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. I had planned to propose to my wife this evening, but it seems she's already made her choice. Meira tried to run. She pushed through the crowd toward the exit, but Aven stepped into her path. Going somewhere? Aven asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. You, Meira hissed. You did this. We did this, Aven corrected. Mr. Valden and I. Amazing what people accomplish when they work together. Lukas had disappeared completely, probably already in his car heading for the airport. But Meira was trapped in the center of the room, surrounded by colleagues, clients, and board members who'd just heard her confess to multiple felonies. Janet Morrison from HR pushed through the crowd, her face grim. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at Meira. Miss Valden, Janet said formally, we need to talk. This is a setup, Meira said desperately. Soren's unstable. He's been stalking me, vandalizing property. You can't believe anything he says. I'm not believing him, Janet replied. I'm believing the evidence, and your own voice. Security did escort someone out of the gala that night, but it wasn't me. The aftermath of the audio presentation was chaos. Board members huddled in urgent conversations. Executives slipped out side exits. Reporters who'd been covering the charity event suddenly had a much bigger story. I remained on stage, watching the spectacle unfold. Meira stood in the center of the room like a spotlight performer, except the performance was her professional and personal destruction. "This is illegal," she announced to anyone who would listen. "Recording private conversations without consent. This evidence is inadmissible." "In court, maybe," I said into the microphone. "But this isn't a courtroom. This is the court of public opinion." Patricia Mills, the CFO, approached the stage with 2 other board members. Her face was stone-cold professional. "Mr. Valden," she said, "we need copies of everything you just presented." "Already prepared," I replied, pulling out a folder thick with documents. "Financial records, email chains, audio transcripts, everything you need for a complete investigation." "And the source of this information?" "Multiple sources. Some obtained through legal discovery of my own marital assets. Some provided by cooperative employees who were concerned about corporate malfeasance." Aven stepped forward. "I can verify the authenticity of all documents and recordings. I was present for most of these conversations." Patricia nodded grimly. "Miss Bardell will need a formal statement." "I have one prepared," Aven replied, producing her own folder, along with additional evidence of systematic fraud dating back 24 months. Meira finally found her voice. "You can't do this to me. I've given everything to this company." "Yes," Patricia said coldly, "including our reputation." The police arrived 20 minutes later, not uniformed officers, but detectives from the white-collar crime unit. Someone had made calls, and those calls had reached people who took corporate fraud seriously. I watched from the theater balcony as they questioned Meira. She'd recovered some of her composure, probably calculating her legal options, but the evidence was overwhelming, and she knew it. "Feeling better?" Aven joined me at the balcony railing. "Not really," I admitted. "I thought revenge would feel more satisfying." "It's not about satisfaction. It's about justice." "Is there a difference?" "Sometimes." Below us, the detectives were leading Meira toward the exit. She looked up and spotted me watching from the balcony. For a moment, our eyes met across the distance. She mouthed something that looked like, "I'm sorry. Too little, too late." "What happens now?" I asked Aven. "Now we deal with the consequences. The investigation will take months. There will be trials, probably plea bargains. The company will restructure, people will lose jobs." "Do you regret it?" "No. But I'm scared about what comes next." I understood that feeling. Revenge was simple compared to rebuilding a life. Monday morning, I showed up at Meridian Corp expecting to be fired. Instead, I found Patricia Mills waiting in my cubicle. "Mr. Valden," she said, "we need to talk." Her office was on the executive floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture. The kind of office I'd never expected to see from the inside. "First," Patricia said, "I want to thank you for bringing this situation to our attention." "I had personal motivations," I replied honestly. "Of course you did. But you also saved this company from a much larger scandal. The bonus scheme was expanding. Within 6 months, we would have been looking at federal investigations and possible criminal charges for the entire board." "What happens to Meira?" "That's between her and the prosecutors. But she won't be working in corporate compliance again." Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me with sharp eyes. "You demonstrated remarkable initiative in gathering this evidence. Technical skills, investigative ability, and most importantly, discretion in how you presented it. Thank you. I'm offering you a position in our internal audit department, significant pay increase, better benefits, and the opportunity to use your skills for legitimate purposes." The offer was tempting. More money, more respect, a chance to move beyond the basement cubicle. But it also meant staying at Meridian Corp, working in the same building where my marriage had imploded. "I need time to think about it," I said. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That evening, I met Aven for coffee at a shop downtown. She looked tired but relieved, like someone who'd finally put down a heavy burden. "They offered me Meira's job," she said without preamble. Congratulations. I haven't accepted yet. Why not? Because I'm not sure I want to stay in that world. Corporate compliance, regulatory oversight, managing other people's lies. Maybe it's time for something different. I understood completely. Success built on someone else's destruction didn't feel like victory. What would you do instead? I've been thinking about law school, public interest work maybe, help people who can't afford to hire investigators to expose corporate fraud. That sounds perfect for you. What about you? Are you taking Patricia's offer? I don't know. Part of me wants to stay and prove I'm more than just the IT guy who got lucky, but another part wants to leave all this behind. You don't have to decide tonight. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived a corporate war and weren't sure what peace looked like. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. We need to talk. M. Meira. Out on bail, apparently, and still trying to control the narrative. I showed the message to Aven. Should I respond? That's up to you. But remember, anything you say to her now could be used in court proceedings. What could she possibly have to say that would matter? Maybe she wants to apologize. Maybe she wants to threaten you. Maybe she's just desperate and grasping at straws. I deleted the message without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having. The next few days brought a parade of investigators, lawyers, and reporters. The Meridian Corp scandal was front-page news in the business section, complete with photos of executives being led away in handcuffs. Lukas had fled to a non-extradition country, but his assets were frozen and his reputation destroyed. He'd never work in corporate America again. Meira was fighting the charges, claiming she'd been manipulated by Lukas and coerced into participating in the fraud. Her lawyer was spinning a story about an abusive relationship and emotional manipulation. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Thursday afternoon, I was debugging a server issue when security called my extension. Mr. Valden, you have a visitor in the lobby. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I went upstairs anyway. Meira sat in one of the leather chairs near the reception desk, looking smaller than I remembered. The expensive clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the strain in her face. Hello, Soren, she said when she saw me. You shouldn't be here. This is probably a violation of your bail conditions. I need to explain. No, you don't. Please, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I led her to a quiet corner of the lobby. We sat in chairs facing each other, like strangers making polite conversation. I never meant for it to go this far, she began. Which part? The fraud or the betrayal? Any of it. It started small, just some paperwork irregularities that Lukas asked me to overlook. Then it got bigger, and I was in too deep to back out. And us? Was that part of the scheme from the beginning? She was quiet for a long moment. No. I did love you, Soren. Maybe I still do. You have a funny way of showing love. I know how this looks. I know what you must think of me. But I was trapped. Lukas said if I didn't cooperate, he'd frame me for everything. So you decided to frame me instead? I was scared. I thought if I could make a clean break, start over somewhere else, maybe I could fix this. By destroying my career and reputation, I thought you'd be better off without me. I thought you'd move on, find someone who deserved you. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd convinced herself that ruining my life was somehow an act of kindness. I don't believe you, I said simply. I know. I probably wouldn't believe me either. Is that all you wanted to say? I wanted to ask you to consider testifying on my behalf, as a character witness. You knew me before all this started. You know I'm not a criminal. I stared at her, wondering if she was serious. After everything she'd done, she wanted me to help her avoid the consequences. You're joking. I'm desperate, Soren. I'm looking at 5 years in prison. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed, and the only person who ever really knew me is sitting right here. The person I knew was a lie. No, she wasn't. The woman you married, The woman who loved you, she was real. She just got lost somewhere along the way. For a moment, I almost believed her. The vulnerability in her voice, the tears in her eyes, the familiar way she said my name. It was like seeing glimpses of the woman I'd fallen in love with. Then I remembered the recordings, her laughter as she called me pathetic, her cold calculation as she planned my destruction. "I can't help you," I said, standing up. "Soren, please. You made your choices, Meira. Now live with them." I walked away without looking back, leaving her alone in the lobby of the company where she'd once wielded power and influence. That night, I called Patricia Mills and accepted her job offer. Some bridges were worth burning, others were worth building. 3 months later, I stood in the conference room on the 20th floor of Meridian Corp, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. My new office was modest compared to the executive suites, but it had a view and a door that closed. More importantly, it came with respect. The internal audit department had been restructured after the scandal, with new oversight procedures and expanded authority. My job was to investigate financial irregularities and ensure compliance with federal regulations. Essentially, I was being paid to be suspicious of everything. It was perfect work for someone who'd learned not to trust appearances. Knock, knock. Aven appeared in my doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd decided against law school, at least for now, taking a position in the legal department as a paralegal specializing in corporate compliance. "Any word on the sentencing?" I asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Meira pled guilty to 3 felony counts. She'll serve 18 months minimum, probably 24 with the federal charges. And Lukas? Still fighting extradition, but his assets are frozen, and Interpol has him on a watch list. He's not living the high life anymore." I nodded, feeling oddly empty. I'd expected satisfaction from their downfall, but mostly I felt tired. "You okay?" Aven asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Just thinking about how different everything is now. Different good or different bad? Different complicated?" My phone rang before I could elaborate. Patricia Mills, asking me to come to her office immediately. Her tone suggested urgency. "What do you think that's about?" Aven asked. "Probably another investigation. We've been busy since the restructuring." Patricia's office had been redecorated since my last visit, with new furniture and a more professional atmosphere. She sat behind her desk with a grim expression, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. "Soren," she said, "meet Agent Davidson and Agent Chen from the FBI. They have some questions about the Meridian investigation." My stomach dropped. "Am I in trouble?" "That depends," Agent Davidson replied, "on how cooperative you're willing to be." They spent the next hour grilling me about my methods for gathering evidence against Meira and Lukas. The remote access to Meira's computer was technically illegal, even though we'd been married. The recordings were admissible in civil proceedings, but problematic for criminal prosecution. "We're not looking to prosecute you," Agent Chen assured me. "But we need to understand the chain of evidence for our case." "What case?" "The Meridian fraud was bigger than we initially thought. Shell companies in 7 countries, money laundering operations, connections to organized crime. Your wife and her boss were small fish in a very large pond. The investigation had expanded into a multi-agency task force targeting international financial crimes. My evidence had opened a door to something much larger and more dangerous. "We'd like you to consider working with us," Agent Davidson said. "Your technical skills and investigative instincts could be valuable." "Working with you how?" "Consulting basis. Help us trace digital evidence, analyze financial records, maybe go undercover in other corporations where we suspect similar operations." The offer was tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Corporate espionage for the federal government, using my skills to expose fraud and corruption. "I need time to think about it," I said. "Of course. But don't take too long. We're moving fast on this investigation." That evening, I met Aven for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the river. The city lights reflected on the water, creating patterns that shifted with the current. "FBI?" she said when I told her about the meeting. That's serious. It's also dangerous. If these operations are connected to organized crime, getting involved could put me at risk. It could also give your life real meaning, using your skills to help people, to fight corruption on a larger scale. Or it could get me eliminated by people who don't appreciate federal investigations. We ate in thoughtful silence, both considering the implications. The safe choice was to stay at Meridian Corp, do my job, and rebuild my life quietly. The dangerous choice was to join a crusade against corporate corruption that could lead anywhere. What does your gut tell you? Aven asked. That I'm tired of playing it safe. Then maybe it's time to take some risks. My phone buzzed with a text message. This time I recognized the number. Meira, still reaching out from wherever she was awaiting sentencing. The message was short. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness. I showed it to Aven. Think she means it? Does it matter? I suppose not. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Some chapters needed to end completely before new ones could begin. The next morning, I called Agent Davidson and accepted their offer. 6 months later, I was sitting in a hotel room in Miami, reviewing financial records from a construction company suspected of laundering money for a drug cartel. The work was challenging, dangerous, and more fulfilling than anything I'd ever done. Aven had eventually decided on law school after all, specializing in white-collar crime prosecution. We stayed in touch through encrypted messages and occasional visits when my assignments brought me back to the city. Meira was serving her sentence at a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she was teaching computer skills to other inmates and working on her appeal. Part of me hoped she'd find some kind of redemption, but I'd stopped caring about her fate. The Meridian investigation had led to 17 indictments, including 3 sitting executives from Fortune 500 companies. Lukas had been extradited and was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. His information had opened new lines of investigation across multiple industries. I'd become something I never expected, a professional skeptic, someone who specialized in finding the lies hidden behind corporate facades. The work took me to different cities every few months, investigating everything from healthcare fraud to defense contractor corruption. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd chosen. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The hotel phone rang, interrupting my review of the construction company records. Mr. Valden? Agent Davidson's voice. We have a new assignment for you. Tech company in Seattle, suspected of selling user data to foreign governments. Interested? I looked out the hotel window at the Miami skyline, thinking about corporate corruption and personal betrayal, about justice and revenge and the thin line between them. When do I start? Some stories end with resolution, others end with new beginnings. This was both.